All right, buckle up, everybody. We are going deep today, deep into a real-life mystery that has had people scratching their heads for decades. The Dyatlov Pass Incident, it's 1959, Soviet Union, Cold War, you know the vibes. We've got 9 experienced hikers venturing into the Ural Mountains, and later they're found dead. But not just dead, dead under some seriously weird circumstances. And today we're going to try and figure out what the heck happened. We've got a whole stack of sources for this one: Wikipedia, Smithsonian Magazine, articles from Futurity, all that's interesting. Oh, and even a BBC podcast. We're not messing around, folks, so let's get into it.
You know, the Dyatlov Pass Incident, it's one of those mysteries that just gets under your skin. You've got the adventure, the unforgiving environment, and then all those details that just make you go, wait, what?
Yeah, like, for real. All right, so imagine this. It's February 1959. You're trudging through the snow with a group of 9 other hikers, led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student, pretty impressive. You're on this challenging ski trek across the northern Urals, aiming for this peak called Gora Otorten. And we're talking grade the 3rd hiking here, the most difficult level back in the Soviet Union at the time. And it's February, folks, the dead of winter. These hikers knew it was going to be tough, but they were no strangers to adventure.
These weren't just some weekend hikers, you know. They were skilled, experienced, familiar with the terrain, prepared for the conditions. So one of the things that makes this whole thing so baffling.
Right, like what could have possibly happened to a group like that? And here's another thing. Early on in the expedition, one of the hikers, Yuri Yudin, has to turn back. Bad knee pain? Imagine if that had been you.
Yeah, talk about a twist of fate. He ends up being the sole survivor of the group, purely by chance. Chills, right?
I know. So the remaining 9 hikers, they press on, documenting their journey. Diaries, cameras, you know, the whole deal. But weeks later, on February 26th, a search party finds their abandoned tent on the slopes of Kholat Chakol, which, by the way, translates to Dead Mountain in the local Mansi language. A little creepy, maybe a foreshadowing, but hold on, because the real mystery starts inside that tent.
And when they found that tent, it wasn't just abandoned, it was ripped open from the inside.
Whoa, okay. Yeah, and it's not like they packed up and left in an orderly fashion either. Belongings scattered everywhere, food laid out like they were about to eat. And here's the kicker: footprints leading away from the tent, down towards a wooded area. Some barefoot, some in just socks.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'm not ditching my tent in freezing temperatures without my boots on.
That's a huge red flag, right? It just screams a desperate escape. Something spooked them bad, something terrifying. What?
Exactly. So now you're part of the search party following these footprints, tension building, and bam, you stumble upon the first 2 bodies, Krivonyshenko and Doroshenko, near a small fire under a Siberian pine, only in their underwear.
The location, the lack of clothing, the fire, all signs pointing to a desperate fight for survival. The autopsy showed they died of hypothermia. But Doroshenko also had burns, and he had actually bitten off a piece of his own hand, probably in a delirious state.
That's rough, man, and sadly, it gets even worse. Over the next few days, 3 more bodies are found: Dyatlov, Komogorova, and Slobodin. It looked like they were trying to get back to the tent. They also died from the cold. But the really disturbing stuff, that was still to come.
Yeah. Finding those last 4 bodies months later, that's when things went from mysterious to straight up bizarre.
Okay, hold on to your hats, folks, because here's where it gets intense. Thibaut Brunel's massive skull fracture. Dubinina and Zolotaryov severe chest trauma, like they'd been hit by a truck. And get this, Dubinina was missing her tongue and eyes. Zolotaryov missing his eyes too. It's gruesome.
I mean, these weren't your typical hypothermia or animal attack injuries. One doctor even said the force needed to inflict those injuries is like a car crash.
A car crash out in the wilderness. How? And as if it couldn't get any weirder, some of the clothing found on the hikers had traces of radiation on them.
The radiation thing is interesting. Some clothes had it, some didn't. And remember, this was just a couple of years after the Kishtim disaster, a big nuclear accident in the region. So it's possible they were exposed to low levels of radiation even before the expedition.
Okay, so maybe not aliens or anything like that, but still, another layer of weirdness to this whole thing. What do you make of it so far?
Well, there are a lot of theories floating around, and we're going to get into those. But I think it's safe to say the Dyatlov Pass Incident is one for the books.
Definitely. So we've got all these pieces of the puzzle. Experienced hikers, a ripped tent, bizarre injuries, radiation, and we're left wondering, what happened out there? I mean, come on, it's like something out of a mystery novel.
It really is. And naturally, a case like this attracts a ton of theories.
Right. Like some people jump straight to the monster attack. A yeti, some unknown creature lurking in the Urals. Especially with those injuries, right? I mean, those weren't your average bear scratches.
Well, the Mansi people do have legends about these mysterious beings. And the severity of the injuries does make you wonder.
Right. Makes you think twice about venturing into the wilderness.
But, and it's a big but, so far there's no physical evidence to back up a creature attack. No unusual footprints, no signs of a struggle that could be explained by the harsh conditions.
So we're back to square one.
Not quite. We have to consider all possibilities, even if some are more far-fetched than others.
Speaking of far-fetched, what about aliens? Gotta throw that one out there. There were reports of strange lights in the sky around that time, and then there's the radiation. It all sounds a bit sci-fi, doesn't it?
It does. And I can see why people would connect those dots. But again, where's the evidence? We've talked about the possible explanations for the radiation, and those eyewitness accounts of strange lights. Well, they're not always reliable, especially in an environment where stress and the cold can play tricks on your mind.
Okay, fair point. So if it's not a Yeti or aliens, then what? What about something more down to earth? Like, what if this was a military experiment gone wrong? I mean, we are talking about the Cold War. Lots of secrets, lots of cover-ups.
That's a good point. The Soviet Union was notoriously secretive, and the possibility of a military connection, we can't just dismiss it.
Right. I mean, wouldn't they want to keep something like that under wraps?
Absolutely. Some theories suggest that the hikers might have stumbled into a restricted area. Maybe they were exposed to some kind of experimental weapon or technology that could explain the radiation, the injuries, maybe even the initial reluctance of the Soviet authorities to release information.
So are we saying there's a chance they were caught in some kind of Cold War intrigue?
It's possible, but we have to be careful not to jump to conclusions. We need evidence. And finding evidence in a remote area like that from so long ago, well, it's a long shot.
All right, so maybe the military angle is a dead end too. But what about the official explanation? The Soviets concluded that the hikers died because of a compelling natural force. Sounds pretty vague, right?
It is, and that vagueness has fueled a lot of the speculation surrounding the case. But among natural explanations, the most likely culprit is an avalanche.
An avalanche? How would that explain everything?
Picture this. The hikers set up camp on a slope, maybe unknowingly weakening the snowpack above. Later that night, a slab avalanche, a large section of snow breaking loose, slams into their tent.
Okay, so they cut their way out, panicked, ran out into the freezing night without the right clothes. That explains the ripped tent, the missing clothes, and maybe some of the injuries.
Right, and those more severe injuries on the four found further down the slope. Maybe they were caught in a secondary avalanche or fell into a hidden crevasse. It's even possible that wild animals scavenged some of the bodies after death, which might explain the missing soft tissues.
So the avalanche theory, it kind of ties things together. But doesn't it still leave some unanswered questions?
You're absolutely right. There are some holes in the avalanche theory.
Like what?
For one, there wasn't a lot of physical evidence of an avalanche found at the site. And the slope wasn't considered particularly steep or prone to avalanches.
Yeah.
And these were experienced hikers. Wouldn't they have recognized the risk and camped somewhere safer?
Good points. It's almost like the more we learn, the more questions pop up.
It is. And on top of all that, some researchers have proposed another possibility. A katabatic wind.
A katabatic wind? What's that?
It's a powerful downslope wind. They can reach hurricane-force speeds. Imagine that, rushing down the mountain, creating a terrifying, disorienting experience.
Wow, yeah, I can see how that would explain the hikers abandoning their tent so suddenly.
Exactly. It's a compelling theory, especially considering the geography of the area. But like the avalanche theory, it doesn't fully explain those brutal injuries.
So we're back to a bunch of theories and no clear answers. It's frustrating.
It is. The Dyatlov Pass incident is a case where even the most compelling explanations have their flaws.
It's like we have all the pieces of the puzzle, but we can't quite fit them together.
Well, there's still one piece we haven't explored yet. The historical context.
You mean the whole Cold War thing?
Exactly. Remember, this was the Soviet Union, a time of secrets and misinformation.
So are you saying there could be more to the story than we know?
Some researchers even suggest that the hikers might have been victims of a cover-up.
A cover-up? What kind of cover-up are we talking about here?
Well, there are a few different theories floating around. One is that the hikers stumbled upon something they shouldn't have. Maybe a secret military operation or a forbidden zone. And the authorities, to prevent a leak, well, they staged the whole thing to look like an accident.
That sounds pretty far out there.
It does, I'll admit. But remember, this was a time of paranoia and suspicion. Anything was possible.
True. It's not like we can just call up the KGB and ask them what really happened.
Exactly. Another theory is that the hikers' deaths were accidental. But the authorities, to avoid embarrassment or to protect state secrets, they altered the evidence and fabricated a story.
So basically, we may never know the full truth. It's all just speculation and conspiracy theories.
Well, not necessarily. There are still people actively investigating the Dyatlov Pass incident. New evidence is being uncovered, old evidence is being re-examined, and with advances in forensic science and technology, who knows? Maybe someday we'll finally get some answers.
I hope so. It would be amazing to finally solve this mystery after all these years. But even if we don't get concrete answers, the Dyatlov Pass incident will always be a reminder of the power of the unknown, the mysteries that lurk out there in the world, and the limits of our understanding.
It's a story that captures the imagination and forces us to confront the fact that sometimes things happen that we just can't explain.
Well said. Well, folks, there you have it, the Dyatlov Pass incident, a chilling tale of adventure, mystery, and unanswered questions. What do you think happened out there on Dead Mountain? Was it a freak accident, a cover-up, something even more sinister? We may never know for sure, but the theories and speculation are all part of what makes the story so captivating. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to all the sources we used, and if you have any theories of your own, we'd love to hear them. Until next time, keep exploring, and happy deep diving.